Imagine living forever, not spiritually, but literally walking this earth for centuries, watching empires rise and fall, mastering every weapon ever forged, and carrying the power of every soul you've ever defeated. That is what it means to be an immortal in the world of Highlander. Ever since the 1986 fantasy action film introduced us to this extraordinary breed of beings, they have remained one of the most iconic supernatural groups in all of pop culture. And it's not hard to see why. Because the Immortals are walking gods trapped in human skin, armed with a set of powers so unique that no other fictional creature quite compares. So what exactly makes them so powerful? What are the abilities that set them apart from every other supernatural entity out there? Today we are breaking down every single superpower the Immortals possess, from the ones you already know to the ones that will genuinely surprise you. We are starting with biological immortality. Yes, absolutely. We're starting with the one no one could have guessed. Biological immortality. The Immortals are immune to most things that could kill a normal human being. Also, they could repair their life-threatening injuries as if they were a normal scratch or resurrect their bodies from nearly impossible conditions, especially in the movies. Like in Highlander 2, The Quickening, that was least bothered about the multiple gunshots toward his chest, or Duncan is fighting multiple stab wounds in Highlander Endgame. In Highlander the animated series, they are also depicted as beings unthreatened by death, but they do have something called the first death. So what is the first death? According to the franchise's producer, Bill Panzer, Immortals carry within them the seed of their immortality, which is triggered by a violent death. In the Highlander, the series episode Freefall, Duncan MacLeod explains this to Felicia Martins, that it's only when we die that we become immortal. After that violent death, the Immortals return to life fully healed. This is called first death. But in all true sense, they can be killed through beheadings. The Immortals also show resistance against diseases, toxins, and poison. For instance, Xavier St. Cloud uses poisonous gas to send his enemies to a sound sleep. But it doesn't mean the Immortals don't fear anything. They have their own insecurities. According to Panzer, one of an Immortal's greatest fears is to be buried alive and probably unfound for thousands of years and being burned alive. Instant regeneration. As I already told you, having an unlimited lifespan comes with pros. The Immortals can resurrect from any position or heal their wounds as if they never existed. But I'll go a little deep here. See, it's true their wounds disappear faster than your paycheck, but not around the neck. That's why the beheading. The healing is actually channeled by performing quickening flashing across the wound. What is this quickening thing? I'll discuss it next. But Immortal's regeneration has some limitations. The Immortal cannot regenerate their arm or a major part of their body if it is separated from the main body. Panzer once stated in Highlander the series episode For Tomorrow We Die, where Xavier St. Cloud's left hand is severed by Duncan MacLeod's blade. We hold the question of what happens when an Immortal loses a body part other than his head. It does not grow back, does not regenerate. Even creative consultant David Abramowitz explained, it posed a number of questions for us as to whether a hand regenerates, and we had decided that it didn't, even for Immortals. That they could heal, but they couldn't regenerate. In truth, we, the writers, sat around the room for hours talking about, could we do this? Could we not do this? And finally, we decided to go for it. But the separated portions could be rejoined with the main body, given that the Immortal has all the pieces together and it's in a condition to perform the reconnection. But it's not the same for all the wounds. Some of their wounds also heal normally as well. For instance, Colin MacLeod has a permanent diagonal scar on his face after his head was split into two, giving him his first death. The quickening. Okay, this is one ability that most of you were waiting for. Whenever an Immortal's head is severed, a powerful energy is released from their body, which is termed the quickening. Over time, actors and creatives associated with the franchise have tried to explain this ability based on their understanding. For instance, Adrian Paul, who plays Duncan MacLeod, the lead of Highlander the series, mentioned that the quickening is the receiving of all the power and knowledge another Immortal has obtained throughout his or her life. It's like the receiving of a sacrament or a massive orgasm. Even the producers have shed some light regarding the quickening. They mentioned the power of the quickening is the equivalent of a major electrical storm hitting. Windows explode, lights short-circuit, it's almost as if the victorious Immortal is in the center of a lightning storm. In short, the triumphant Immortal gets the cookie. I mean, the victorious one gets to absorb the energy of the defeated one. Panzer has mentioned another important thing about quickening. He explained that if an Immortal is decapitated by something other than the sword of the Immortal he was fighting, what we thought was, as long as an Immortal is present, he gets the quickening. If an Immortal is beheaded and there is no Immortal nearby to receive the quickening, for example, if the beheader is immortal, then the quickening dissipates. Talking about important things, what happens to a good Immortal who goes on beheading the evil ones? Well, they do face repercussions for that. The quickening of the evil one takes over the personality of the good one and makes him the evil one instead. This is called dark quickening. Likewise, the evil one can also become the good one too if it kept on increasing its body count. I mean, the beheading. This is called light quickening, and only Darius is one such example of it. Another key thing about quickening is that the Immortal can sense when a quickening is happening near them, and even the Immortal who has died. The best example of this is in Highlander the series, when Duncan falls on his knees when he senses that his friend Lucas Desiree has been killed by Howard. But this feeling is not always correct. Duncan witnessed quickening when Richie killed Christoph in Testimony. Initially, he suspected that Richie had been killed, but it was the other way around. No doubt, quickening is cool stuff to add to the layers of the character, but the makers of the Highlander the series had to overcome a problem to execute this. Since it was going to be aired on television, the makers were asked to tone down the violence, meaning they needed to make the beheading look less brutal and acceptable to the television audience. Panzer said, "In the movies, you know, we had a lot more license, but this being television in the early 1990s, we couldn't have a lot of body parts flying around. So we tried to use something that created the idea that somebody got their head cut off, but that it was more like a jolt of light came out of the head and the lightning flew around them. This, I suppose, was less violent than the movie version. So in order to avoid unwanted cuts, they scripted the scene in their pilot episode, The Gathering, in this way. We will call this shot, for want of a better team, the quickening thrust. This will be one of our signature shots of the show. Perhaps there's a particular glint to the sword as it slashes towards us on a point of view shot, representing the coup de grace which is about to be delivered. In any event, what we will not see is a decapitation. No head leaves the body, indeed no sword strikes the neck. Instead, we cut to the quickening is a blinding flash of blue light emanating from what was the bad guy and filling the screen and arcing into anything electrical nearby. Thus, street lamps, car headlights, windows, etc. are blown out. The buzz. Here's another ability of the Immortals that you might have been waiting for. So what is this buzz? According to Panzer, Immortals are able to sense each other's presence from a reasonable distance. We called it the buzz. That word was never used, but that's how it was featured in the scripts. If you go by the script of the Highlander the series pilot episode The Gathering, the buzz has been mentioned as, "We hear something we'll describe as the Highlander buzz." Perhaps it's accompanied by a moving camera at an odd angle. Something. Whatever it is, MacLeod suddenly senses it strongly. The buzz is something felt, not heard. But it doesn't work the same for everyone. Pre-Immortals do not experience the buzz. If we go by the scene description, Duncan senses the buzz, but Tessa does not, as the buzz is very faint and easy to miss. But the sensation of buzz occurs at a very sad note. The pre-Immortals leak their presence, which in this case, buzz, when they are dying for the first time. The best example of this is when a mortally wounded Alfred Cahill was dying. He made Duncan experience the buzz, before Cahill took the final sleep. And the Immortals who are yet to know anything about the buzz experience it as a headache like Colin MacLeod or Claudia Jardine did. Immortals who die temporarily do not trigger the buzz, and even the reasonable distance to sense the buzz has not been clarified yet. Now, how would the audience sense the buzz? For that, the makers introduced a unique sound, produced at the Postmodern Sound post-production facility in Vancouver. Sound supervisor Tony Gronick explained that a metal grinder that's affected so it jumps from left to right and has reverb on it, and a whoosh-like sound created by former sound effects editor Mike Thomas. Just like Spider Sense, buzz sounds like a must-have ability. However, it fails to detect the pinpoint location from which it originates. Sometimes Immortals mistake human beings as their own kind, while the real Immortal stays hidden. We see this in action when Duncan mistakenly assumes Richie to be the Immortal, but he didn't know that Slan Quince was hiding on the roof. Moreover, neither Slan nor Duncan had the slightest clue about Connor MacLeod, which suggested that too many Immortals in the same space do not generate strong buzz, or they cannot single out one from the several others. But they can easily detect a new buzz entering the region. For example, Duncan and Darius could sense Xavier St. Cloud as it caused buzz, which lasted for a brief moment. Superhuman combat ability. The Immortals have one thing we humans don't: time, and they used it to the fullest by breaking sweat in sharpening their fighting skills. From generation to generations, they passed their fighting skills from teacher to student, as Ramirez did with Connor in the Highlander. Adding more to this, the Immortals have their mastery in all types of weapons, starting from axes, sickles, machetes, and spears. But the most common weapon they used was the sword. For them, weapons were not just mere tools, but an extension of their body, which signified their way of life. To reflect this relationship in Highlander the series pilot episode script, writers wrote, "Seemingly out of nowhere, MacLeod lifts a beautiful katana samurai sword. We can see that it is as familiar to him as a 38 police special would be to a cop." When he later gives a similar sword to Immortal Felicia Martins, Duncan tells her, "Take good care of it. Make it a part of you. It may be the only friend you have." She later breaks the sword in a fight with Duncan. Centuries of knowledge. It is said that the pen is mightier than the sword, and if you have time on your side like the Immortals, you strike a balance between the sword and the pen, and make both mightier. I've already told you about their combatic skills, but they also fill themselves with all the knowledge in the world and pick up other skills that make a lot of money. Later, some become terrorists like Annie. Some become policemen because they like to fight. Some become great lovers. Some become symbols of justice like Duncan, who try to do the right thing. Some become like Caleb Cole and Carl, who isolate themselves from society. And finally, some become highest paid contract killers like Kyler, Anthony Gollin, and Paul Kinman. In fact, Kyler lived for 354 years and killed almost 2,760 people during his lifetime. Masters in adapting environment. If you plan to live a long time, you must be ready to adapt to anything life throws at you. And the Immortals do the same. Living for centuries helps them exploit governments and the best bureaucratic systems worldwide. The best example of this is Duncan, as he is a master at creating new identities and documents related to them. He is also an expert in transferring all his assets and properties between his identity. Regarding adaptability, Panzer has said a very important thing. It's pretty much life in a shadowy world, making sure that after 20 years or 25 years you leave the place you are, change your identity, because you're not getting older and people are going to start to notice. So if you're stopping and starting again and again, then adapting becomes an ultimate skill for survival, not a choice. Psychological resilience. Most of the Immortals outlive normal humans. At first it might look like a blessing, but it's more like a curse. Why? Because the longer you stay, the longer you see people you love suffer, leave you behind, and then what's left is just loneliness. This might sound very philosophical, but it's true. It's not easy to live alone and start your life with another group of friends, relatives, and family. In the Immortals' case, this is the same, but their coping mechanism with loneliness is on an elite level, as they have the power of psychological resilience. They know their truth and act accordingly. However, the makers of Highlander the series have tried to show some positives regarding immortality. Panzer and Abramovitz reckon most of the time when we think about immortality, we think about the problems of immortality. The loneliness, the idea of losing loved ones over the centuries, the danger of being in conflict with other Immortals, the solitude, the living a dark, shadowy life. The show Highlander the series Season 2, Run for Your Life, showcases how great it can be to be an Immortal, how a man can, in 3 lifetimes, go from being a slave to being someone with hopes and dreams of becoming a professional baseball player, to finally someone who had hopes and dreams of actually changing the world. Their elite mentality is also visible, as they think mortals are fragile. Other abilities. The Immortals have other miscellaneous abilities that couldn't be categorized, so I'm discussing them as a whole. In non-canonical Highlander animated movies and series, the Immortals have been showcased as beings having extreme speed and strength. In the TV series and movies, there were a few Immortals like Nakano, who could project illusions, a gift that was later acquired by Kane when he took Nakano's head. Another interesting Immortal, John Garrick, had the ability to see visions, which helped him to see things far away from his location. When he was burned as a witch, he just went mad. He developed the power to project illusions into the minds and dreams of others, which nearly drove them insane, as he did with Duncan MacLeod. Cassandra is also one such immortal who has the gift of illusions. Additionally, she also used her voice to influence others, but that power was limited. Cassandra's student, Roland Contos, learned her ways and even became a more lethal weapon than she was, thanks to his additional skills. Well, that was the end of the list, guys. Hope you liked the compilation as I tried to go deep into each and every power. So, which superpower of the Immortals excited you the most? And if given a chance, which one would you like to have? Comment your thoughts and like and share with your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting lore breakdowns.